this morning, I wanted to talk about officers in the church. If you are with me, let's turn our attention to 1 Timothy chapter 3. 1 Timothy chapter 3. The requirements of elders. The requirements of elders. Now Paul begins this kind of work. He talks about, this is a true saying, if a man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good work. If a man desireth the office of a bishop, he desire a good work. The office of a bishop, a bishop is a word that has been misinterpreted and interpreted different by different types and groups. Those who practice the episcopal form of church government put great emphasis upon this word and its interpretation. Look at how sometimes we look at bishop. Bishop actually means simply an overseer or a superintendent. In the early church, the pastor was called by several different titles. Sometimes he is called a presbyter or an elder. He was called a pastor or a shepherd. He was called a bishop or an overseer. He was called also a minister. The pastor was never called reverend. And I don't think any preacher should be called reverend, because the meaning of it means terrible, that which incites terror. I don't think that any pastor can incite terror than God himself. It is a name which only applies to God, because he can incite terror, and it's a terrible thing to fall in the hands of God. And that is why we call him reverend. So I don't know how that word secretly slipped into the mouth of those being ordained, and today everyone wanted to be styled as reverend. Bishop means overseer. I take the position that the term elder and bishops refer to the same person. Those who hold to the episcopal form of church government will of course disagree with me altogether. I believe that the use of elder or the presbyteros in Greek, refers to the person who holds the office. So when you are called an elder, it tells you who you are, not even the office. So if you are going to hold an office has been designed, but the person who is coming is called an elder. And that is what my position is. And it suggests that he must be a matured Christian. On the other hand, the use of the word bishop, which is episkopos in Greek, refers to the office that is held. So the person and then the office that is held. The person become an elder, and then the office that he holds is the bishop. A bishop in the early church never had an authority over other bishops or elders. He did not have authority over churches. You do not find such a practice presented in the Word of God. So I don't know how they detailed it and how they constructed that word. Even Paul, who founded a number of churches, never spoke of himself as a bishop of a church or as the one who was ruling a church in any way whatsoever. Therefore, the minister is one who is to serve the church, not rule over the church. He desired a good work. He is seeking a place where he can serve in the church. Let me now even translate these words very well. This is a true saying. What does it mean? This is a true saying, could be translated, this is a faithful saying. In other words, this is a saying that stands the test of time. It is one you can depend upon. You can never have anything equal to that except of that which Paul is bringing out. So hear me. Anyone who desireth, now I wanted to change that word. If a man desireth the office of a bishop, should rather be spoken this way. If a man seeks the office of a bishop, this has in it the thought that there will be the active seeking of the office. I believe that a man who has the qualifications ought to seek the office. He ought to or want a place where he can use the gift that the Spirit of God has given him. If the Spirit of God has not given him the gift and is not leading him, then it will be a tragedy indeed if a man shall the office of a bishop. This also suggests that there was not just one bishop in the church, but there were several. And so that word is now interpreted that if a man desireth, so here it means that if you are looking, you are seeking, this is a good thing that you put your thoughts on it. Now let me bring you into the good practices, the positive side, and then the negative side. The verse 2 talks about the positive side of someone seeking that office. A bishop must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. Now let me break the words very down so that it will sink deeper in it, because it's a mouthful. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. These are the positive signs. We have given here the positive requirements of an elder. The things he ought to be. Number one, it says that he must be blameless. The thing that must be understood is that you will be blamed for the things if you hold an office. Any office in the church, you will be blamed. What is important is that the occasion must not be true. And therefore, any accusation that is raised against you must not be true. So therefore, you begin to not even answer anybody who comes up to you are with a task, except that what you have done merits that accusation. Any office in the church that you take, there will be blame on you. And therefore, let it be in your sub-mind and subconscious that these are not true things that are being said of you. What is important is that you will stand alone, and therefore let it come like a storm, and you will be shortly. You see, you must have this dignity working inside you. Now let's look at the words. The husband of one wife. This can be interpreted two ways. It could mean that he ought to be a married man, must be a married man. I remember in Methodist cycle, you cannot be a church leader. We call them the leaders of the church, where they give you a group of people where they will meet in your home or meet in a different place, that they come to the class system. That's how the Methodists operate, the class system. So that when you are going to become a leader, they have to now think about whether you are married. If you are not married, that thing will be held on, and therefore sometimes you are too good, they will try to pair you up with some kind of a married woman or a married man, so you can have the kind of class together. But they never try to entrust it to someone who is not married. I feel that Paul had this in mind. I take the position that Paul had been married and his wife may have died. He could not have been a member of the Sanhedrin, or even the better still, to be a Pharisee. He simply had to marry to gain that kind of influence. Perhaps because of his traveling and the duties that he had, he never had the chance of even thinking about getting married, so that it will take from him what is called to be the roving ambassador, going everywhere and being ambassador for Christ. So he considered Christ after the death of the wife, because nowhere in the Bible was stated that Paul was married. But according to what is stated, that he was a Pharisee, and because he was a chief scribe also, you can never take that position in the Jewish culture when you're not married. And therefore, I hold to that thought that Paul is and was married. So here, then the Bible is talking about the second thing, is that it emphasized that must be of one wife. Polygamy was then a good practice in those days when Paul was living. And so, even though the polygamy was not going to stop somebody from getting into heaven, Paul was saying that as for that office, you can never hold when you have two wives. So that's how he has to emphasize a man, a husband of one wife. In today's language, you will say, what is Paul rattling about? Husband, every husband has one wife. But in those days, you can have a polygamy and be in the church. But yet, Paul is saying that you can never hold an office because you have already disqualified yourself. That's the positive side. And then he said that must be vigilant. Vigilant means temperate. The elder should be calm and not credulous. You cannot be credulous, or you cannot be hyper person. He should be a man who knows how to keep his cool at a point, because where you are going to be elected to, there will be always troubling. But you must have your cool. Then you used another word, sober, means sober-minded or serious. This means this does not mean that the elder cannot have a sense of humor, but he should be serious about the office which he holds. The very office that you are holding, take it very serious. Don't play it and do it anyhow. Then he says that must be of good behavior. An elder should be of orderly conduct. Orderly conduct. Good behavior means orderly conduct. That means that he doesn't do questionable things. I know of a minister who was really accused of something. He came to me and confided in me. And I hold that position that the man was true to what he was telling me. What they were accusing him of wasn't good. It wasn't true. But because he was careless in his behavior, it muddled the whole thing to look like. How can you just be holding certain things and questionable times and questionable dates when you are just bringing some woman into your home or entering into somebody's home, a woman who is not married, under very odd hours? Even though you have not gone to do anything, it doesn't speak well of you, a minister, going into a woman who is not married. Wouldn't be so proper for you, even though you know that that's not what you are going to do. The public perception about you will always speak a different thing, because they see you going to someone who is not married. And some odd hours, if they see you, if it is even something that you're going to counsel the person, it will be better for you to hold up an office, bring the person in the light, rather than running into the home and trying to go and pray for the person. There are people who love only person who can pray for them is their pastor. But you have to put a kind of sense onto it. This woman is not married at this very hour, calling you into the home. The public perception is what you have to beat also. And this is where the Bible is talking about you must be of good behavior. Either than that, your good works will be publicly be ill spoken of. And not because you are so strong and telling that I'm spiritual. No, nothing can break me. And therefore you can enter into any home and then be able to hold up. And I've seen, there was even a church that was in the First Baptist Church in Tema in Ghana, that the pastor became so much accustomed to one particular woman and was making the woman, and it became a rumor all over. Maybe the pastor was true that was a good friend, but that doesn't speak very well of the pastor, because you can have good men and other people as friends. You can have a female friend, but the fact is that it shouldn't be that so close, to the extent that people were speaking and he didn't care about anything until he has to be removed from that position. But lo and behold, years after, when he has left the church, we saw him married to that same woman. You see, the perception that people built up, even though maybe he was right in that very area of keeping as a good female friend, but the end really told the whole story about what people were considering about. And he says that giving to hospitality means that an elder is to be hospitable individual. What is it? That means that you have to show that kind of hospitality. Sometimes I will just go and preach at some places, and pastors that know me and have held about me that, oh, I am in town, I'm coming to preach here in my hotel, then all of a sudden a pastor will send the wife and then the children, they will bring me a basket of flour and some pleasantries that I should keep it because I might be feeling some kind of hunger during the night, I can have some bars and chocolate. That's very nice of someone playing the role of hospitality. You see, it's not because once you are elder, you have to be mindful of these things. He says that you must be hospitable. You must be play the role of being hospitable. Then the last word over there says must be apt to teach. This is as simple as that. If the person cannot teach, he can never be in that role. So that means that it is expected that anyone who takes up that position must be someone who can teach the word of God, regardless of who you are. That means that a person can never be a novice. You cannot be today Christian and then you select the person to become. You must have the confidence to teach the word of God, and that is the person you can. But bishops are not to preside over different bishops. That's a weird way that we have described. Now let's move on to the negative side of behavior that should also disqualify someone who wants to take up that position. Verse number 3. Not given to wine, no striker, not greedy of filthy lucre, but patient, not a brawler, not covetous. So what is it that it means? These are simple words that we can ignore because it doesn't apply anything, but it's the negative. Now, here comes the negative qualifications, the things that the elder should not be. Not given to wine. He should not be a drunkard, period. No striker, not a violent or what we call pugnacious. Someone who is a striker, you are pugnacious. Not greedy of filthy lucre. What does it mean? Not greedy of filthy lucre. He shouldn't have love of money. The love of money is the root of all evil. The Bible says it in 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 10. The way a church officer handles his money can lead him into a great deal of trouble. Either his own money or the church money. So therefore you must make sure that you look into the things of whether the person handles his money very well, wisely. And if you cannot handle the church money, the church purse will be misappropriated. Now listen, it says there must be patient. What does it mean? Means reasonable. There are people you cannot reason with them. And this is what he's calling here the patient person over there. The word over means that must be reasonable. So that when you go and you are reasoning with the person, carefully planning and taking thoughts of you and knowing exactly what to answer. Then not a brawler. Not a brawler means he should not be contentious person. Men who constantly stirring up trouble in a church should never be selected as a church officer. Stirring up troubles. Stirring up troubles. And then it says that not covetous. Again refers to love of money. So you see that love of liquor and then filthy liquor and then also covetous means that you can never just to see that, oh yeah, you can take any advantage of anything and then you put it into those who go in. This is the sin that sometimes hides that nobody can see it. You see anybody's thing, you want to grab it and have it. You go into a parishioner's home and then you see that they have some kind of decoration, they have something in their home, you really want it, but you have got no means of getting it. But you covet it, and that's the troubling which can be on the downside of a man. If you are very covetous, you can also disapply. You know, I say, no, I can apply for this position. Then look at the next verse, verse 4. One that ruleth his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. An elder should have the authority in his own home, without being a dictator. You have to have your own authority in your own home without being a dictator. Then listen to what happens in the verse 5. If a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? A man does not know how to rule the house of God if he cannot rule his own home. And that is the thought. If you wanted to look at their home, and it would not be a really good thing if you are going to ordain a minister or going to ordain somebody and then you will never know the wife or the husband. You know, sometimes you go to church and you see the woman going to a different church and the man going to a different church. If you see that the person qualifies, the man that you are going to bring into ordination, have the wife going to a different denomination, that means that the man is not ruling his own home very well. There is something that is not so attractive about that man. Why is it that your wife cannot go and follow you into the same place of worship? And so it is. And even if the woman has insisted of going into a different place of worship, which sometimes it happens, when the man tells that I am being considered as a candidate to do this for the church, it is expected of the woman to fully back the husband. And if these things are not seen properly, you have to bring the person and bring the wife into the church and ask that this is what we are planning to give to your husband. Do you subscribe to it? Do you want him to be nominated? And then the wife will say that, well, that is up to you. It's not a good answer. You have to be able to rule your own home. Either than that, you cannot take that position. And now it comes up to this verse also. Look at the verse 6. Not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into condemnation of the devil. Not a novice means not a recent convert, not someone who has recently been saved. Sometimes a man is converted 1 week, and the next week he is made a church officer and asked to give his testimony. This is something that I sometimes, when I go to a church, they say, oh, a brother got saved about last week, and so therefore we are going to bring the person in the front of the church to give a testimony. That's a wrong thing to do. You can never bring up any person in the front who is, he can just testify in a small group of this thing. We should never put up a kind of a whole show to come and tell us how he became a Christian and or maybe a testimony that will engineer. The Bible says no, not a novice. You cannot even go in front of it. And then it says this is the kind of a rule. It says, lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil. Pride was the devil's great sin. Also, it is often the sin of officers in the church and the preachers. It is a danger for all of us, but it is reprehensible when it is in the church. So that pride will not take over, so that person, when he is being taken, pride is the causes of where we see the person whom we want to elect into that office. We are still on the office of a bishop. That person must never be a proud person. Then number 7, verse 7, it says that, moreover, he must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. What does it mean? It means that not only in the church, he must hold a good reputation. When he is standing outside, people, he command respect in even his neighborhood, where he lives, and what people say outside, what they perceive him outside. So it's not only going to be the leader of the church only in the church, but he can be seen outside as someone who has a a very good reputation. So you see that what you are doing, it's both inside and outside. And that's what Paul is referring, which means that the person who is standing outside must also have something to say in about the person that is elected on that office. If that person doesn't pay his bills, and maybe they come in and sometimes his light is taken off, and then it is almost like an eviction notice is come in, and people are testifying that this man, he doesn't pay his bill, and all of a sudden they came in to repossess his car. These troubles can come into her, but the moment you are going to be someone to lead a church, you must be able to have your finances properly, that even it will speak of it very well. I'm not saying that be so rich, but it tells you that don't let these things be a damning to you in your nature. You see that by the time you come home, your light is taken off, your water has been taken off, and you are fetching water from the neighbor, and you are not doing it properly. And all of a sudden, they see that you are an elder of the church, or you are someone who is going to be elected. Beloved, that should even give you that qualification that no, I don't want it, and it is a requirement. When mostly the last time that we go into, they ask us, do you owe anybody? The last time before anybody gets ordained, they ask you, do you owe anybody? And then they talk it very simple. And that is the weight. If you be someone who have been borrowing from people, it disqualifies you from being a pastor, or being someone who is a bishop. So you can never be someone who goes out borrowing money from different people. It doesn't speak well of the position that you take. Now let me move on to the last verse 8, which will give us the chance to talk about now going into the office of a deacon. A deacon. So whether it's a deacon or a deaconess. Deaconess is a woman and a deacon is a man. It says, likewise, verse 8, likewise must the deacon be grave, not double-tongued, not given to much wine, not greedy of filthy liquor. So you can see that two of the qualities go into the first one, not given much to much drinking. Here, first one, it says that not given into wine, but here it tells us that not too much wine. And then it goes on with the not greedy of a filthy liquor. That means it's not be seen as someone who loves money. And that one, we have treated that one. But what is it when they say that the deacon must be grave? What does it mean, must be grave? That means that he should be a man of dignity. A man of dignity. You know, people become dignified when they work on integrity. They are very consistent. When they say something, you don't see them acting a different way. And so in your both conduct, you see, Paul is talking about our creed and our conduct. The creed is what we do it in the church. Our worship, nobody sees it outside. But your conduct will also reveal who you are. So here is it saying that you are to be grave. That means that there must be a dignity attached. You can't just go and take anybody who can just control and hold up that kind of thing. You will be ashamed to call that person is even your elder or is your bishop when he has that kind of undignified way of handling himself. And then the second thing that I want to talk about, not double-tongued. A deacon should not have two-faced. A man's word should amount to something. It can be dangerous when a man tries to please everybody or doesn't have the courage to stand up on his own feet. There is a fine balance between being a Mr. Miliquist and then being a dictator. An officer in the church needs to be in between. So therefore, If you are double-tongued, you have a double face. You speak like this here, but when it comes to action, your action is different from what you speak. And that is exactly what we talk about, that you are a double-tongue. You are just like the snake. And so here paints up the picture of someone. I think I have to end here, and tomorrow I'll pick up the tabs from a different point. So these are the qualifications. These are the tabs that you and I need to build ourselves up there, preparing ourselves to take up a role in the house of God. Every child of God has the potential to do something for the Lord. And God is preparing His church. He says that let this teaching go into them so that it will edify them. What is the edification? Is to move them, pull them up, so they can now present themselves as ministers of God, as God's going to use them. So we're preparing the church, and therefore you pick up the tabs and pick up the pieces. Whatever that you are doing wrong, you begin to quell them all down. And then you know that you are fit for a position. When a position comes and you are called into, you will never have any questionable lifestyle. And these are the things, even though it's a high office, I tell you, you are not being taken as a low person. You are esteemed on the high plane. And therefore, whether you occupy that role or not, you must be seen with these qualities. May God help us. May God grow the church so that we become dependent on God and Jesus, Him alone. May His name be glorified. Amen.